Hey there, vintage car fans, and welcome to Vintage Car Chronicles, your daily dose of automotive history. You can find us on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and YouTube. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a legend, the Lamborghini Miura, the one many consider to be the world's first supercar.
Yeah, it's way more than just a fast car. The Miura was like a cultural phenomenon. It redefined what a sports car could be. Audacious, stylish, a symphony of mechanics. You know what I mean? A statement.
Yeah, I see that. We've got a ton of articles, historical deep dives, even some personal stories about this car. One thing is for sure, the Miura story is as wild and untamed as the bull it was named after. It's almost like it was born out of rebellion.
Well, it practically was. You won't believe this, but the Miura went against everything Ferruccio Lamborghini, the company's founder, originally wanted. It's crazy. Imagine a car being designed in secret against the wishes of the person who created the company. That's the Miura.
Now that's a story I haven't heard before. Tell me more about that. What did Ferruccio want?
Ferruccio was all about grand touring cars. Think powerful, luxurious, built to devour miles on the open road. He wanted nothing to do with Ferraris and their obsession with the racetrack.
So how did a mid-engined, fire-breathing supercar come out of that?
That's where the engineering team comes in. These guys, Dolores Stanzani Wallace, they were visionaries. They saw the potential for a mid-engine sports car that would rewrite the rules, and they went for it, even if it meant going against the boss. They worked on it in their spare time, sketching engineering, pouring their hearts into this radical new concept.
That's incredibly risky. What happened when Ferruccio found out?
Well, they had to show him something eventually, right? So picture this, the 1965 Turin Auto Show. The team unveils the Miura's chassis, the bare bones of the car, no engine, no bodywork, total gamble, but it paid off. People were so blown away by the concept, they started placing orders on the spot.
Wow. Talk about a leap of faith. So did that win Ferruccio over?
It got his attention, that's for sure. Suddenly, there was a ton of pressure to get a complete car ready for the 1966 Geneva Motor Show. But here's the kicker. They hadn't even confirmed if the engine would fit in the engine bay. They filled it with ballast for the Geneva reveal, keeping the hood locked shut. Talk about cutting it close.
I bet that drove the motoring press crazy.
They were clamoring to get a look under the hood. But it didn't matter. The Miura was the star of the show. Its revolutionary mid-engine layout, the sleek, almost predatory lines penned by Marcello Gandini at Bertone. It was an instant sensation.
So this rebellious act of creation actually transformed Lamborghini from grand tours to supercar legends.
Exactly. It set the stage for everything that followed. The Countach, the Diablo, the Murcielago. All of those iconic cars can trace their lineage back to that first daring leap of faith.
Let's dig into that DNA a bit. What made the Miura's design so groundbreaking, especially for the 1960s?
Well, for starters, that mid-engine layout was revolutionary. They took inspiration from both race cars and, believe it or not, the Austin Mini. Yep, that tiny car played a part in the Miura's story. They placed the massive V12 engine transversely sideways behind the driver.
Wait, the Austin Mini, what does that little Econobox have to do with a raging bull like the Miura?
It's all about clever packaging. The Mini's transverse engine and integrated gearbox differential inspired a similar approach for the Miura. Space was limited, so they combined the engine transmission and differential into a single compact unit.
That's incredibly clever. It's like they figured out how to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
And then you had this amazing collaboration between Lamborghini's engineers and Bertone's stylists, led by Marcello Gandini.
Gandini was a young designer at the time, but he had a vision. Together with the engineers, they created something truly special.
Okay, let's talk about those signature design elements. What are the things that make the Miura instantly recognizable, even to someone who doesn't know much about cars?
Well, first, you've got that low-slung silhouette, incredibly aerodynamic, like a cheetah about to pounce. And then there are those famous eyelashes surrounding the headlights.
I've always loved those. They give the Miura a look that's both aggressive and elegant.
Exactly. And let's not forget the louvered rear window. It's not just aesthetically pleasing. It provides ventilation for that powerful V12 engine while still giving you a glimpse of the heart of the beast.
Speaking of the engine, let's dive into the details a bit. Where did that incredible V12 come from?
It's got a fascinating backstory. It was originally designed by Gio Bizzarini, the same genius behind the Ferrari 250 GTO engine. Lamborghini adapted it from the 400 GT model. But here's where it gets really interesting. They used a unique casting process to combine the engine block, crankcase, and transmission into a single unit.
Why did they do that?
This wasn't standard practice back then. By casting it as one piece, they saved weight, improved rigidity, and were able to keep the car's profile incredibly low. And let me tell you, that engine wasn't just powerful, it was a screamer. High revving with a symphony of sound that could make your hair stand on end.
I can only imagine what it must have been like to hear that V12 roar to life.
Now let's slip inside the Miura for a moment. Can you picture yourself behind the wheel?
I'm trying. It's a bit snug, isn't it? But wow, what an interior. It feels so purposeful.
Sporty and driver-focused. That's the Miura's interior in a nutshell. You've got those beautiful twin instrument pods for the speedometer and tachometer front and center. Then there's the hooded center stack with all the secondary gauges and switches, and that exposed chrome gear shifter.
It looks like something out of a spaceship.
Exactly. It's all about that tactile connection between driver and machine. And don't forget the ceiling-mounted switch panel. Pretty avant-garde for the time, right?
So the Miura wasn't just a static design. It evolved over time, right?
You're right. Lamborghini released the P400, then the P400S, and finally the ultimate expression of the Miura, the P400 SV. Each one brought refinements to performance handling and even the aesthetics.
Give me the highlights. What changed from one model to the next?
Well, with the P400S, they brought in some creature comforts like power windows and chrome trim. They also refined the interior and gave the engine a bit more bite with a revised camshaft and larger intake manifolds.
So the S was all about refinement. What about the SV?
The SV was a game changer. They widened the rear fenders to accommodate wider tires, got rid of those eyelashes around the headlights, and gave the taillights a more integrated look. But the real magic happened under the hood.
They cranked things up a notch, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. The SV's V12 was a masterpiece. They further refined the cam timing, tweaked the carburetor settings, and managed to squeeze out an extra 15 horsepower. This thing was a rocket ship, literally. It could hit 60 mph in under 6 seconds and reach a top speed of over 170 mph. That was mind-blowing performance for the time.
Okay, we've covered the design, the engineering, but the Miura is more than just the sum of its parts. It's an icon. It's a legend. Let's talk about its legacy. What kind of impact did this rebellious supercar have on the automotive industry?
The Miura didn't just influence the automotive industry, it revolutionized it. This was the car that established the template for the modern supercar. It showed the world that you could have mind-bending performance and stunning design in a package you could actually drive on the road.
And its impact extends beyond the automotive world, right? I mean, that opening sequence in the Italian Job, pure cinematic gold.
Absolutely. That's one of the most iconic car chases in film history, and the Miura plays the starring role. It perfectly captures the car's spirit, daring, flamboyant, unforgettable.
And for collectors, the Miura is the holy grail. Some models fetch millions of dollars at auction.
It's a testament to the car's enduring appeal. The Miura represents a golden age of automotive design and engineering, and its value just keeps going up.
Now, speaking of rare and valuable Miuras, I've heard whispers about some special editions and prototypes. What can you tell us about those?
Hi, you want to hear about the hidden gems? Buckle up. We've got the Miura Roadster, a one-off show car built by Bertone, basically a topless Miura, absolutely stunning. It was a true head-turner with a lower rollover hoop, larger air intakes, and a more integrated rear spoiler. Sadly, it never made it into production.
Why not? It seems like a topless Miura would have been a guaranteed hit.
Well, there were worries about how stiff the car would be without a roof. Plus, Lamborghini was already having trouble meeting demand for the coupe, so the Roadster stayed a beautiful dream.
What a shame. Now, you mentioned the Miura Jota earlier. That one sounds like it took the performance to a whole new level.
The Miura Jota was a passion project of Bob Wallace Lamborghini's test driver. Now, this guy was obsessed with performance, and that obsession went into overdrive with the Jota. Bob basically stripped the Miura down to its fighting weight, aiming to create a track-ready beast.
You say practical, but come on. How practical is a car with the ground clearance of a skateboard and barely enough room for two people?
Okay, you got me there. It's not exactly a grocery getter, but think about the design choices. The transverse engine layout allowed for a small trunk, which was unheard of in mid-engined cars. The louvered rear window provided ventilation and visibility, and the cabin, while snug, was relatively comfortable for a car of its type.
All right, I'll grant you that. It's more livable than you might expect, especially for a supercar.
Exactly. That's part of what makes the Miura so brilliant. It wasn't just a track weapon, it was a car you could enjoy driving on a regular basis, though it definitely helped if you were on the shorter side to get in and out of that low-slung cabin.
We've talked a lot about the car itself, but what about its cultural impact? You mentioned the Italian Job, which is an obvious one, but are there other places where the Miura has made a splash?
Oh, the Miura has popped up in countless films, TV shows, and music videos over the years, it just has that kind of presence, you know? It commands attention. There's a great story about how Car and Driver magazine back in the 60s had to convince Lamborghini to send them a Miura for testing. They just couldn't believe the performance figures they were hearing.
They thought Lamborghini was exaggerating.
It sounds wild now, but yeah, the Miura's performance was so far ahead of its time, people thought it was too good to be true.
I bet their jaws hit the floor when they finally got behind the wheel.
They were blown away. They called it the ultimate sports car, raving about its speed handling and how refined it was. That review really cemented the Miura's status as a legend.
It's amazing how one car can have such a lasting impact on people.
The Miura's appeal is timeless. Even today, decades after it went out of production, it turns heads and makes hearts race. Speaking of lasting impact, I'm curious, where do you see the Miura's place in automotive history 50 years from now?
That's a great question. I think it'll always be recognized as the car that ushered in the supercar era, celebrated for its daring design, groundbreaking engineering, and cultural influence. Do you think it'll be seen as a museum piece, something to admire from afar, or will it still resonate with future car enthusiasts?
I think it'll be both. It'll definitely be cherished as a classic, a symbol of a golden age. But its spirit, its essence will continue to inspire. Just look at how much influence it's had on modern supercar design.
You're right. You can see echoes of the Miura's DNA in so many cars today. The low-slung proportions, the mid-engine layout, the obsession with aerodynamic efficiency.
It's because the Miura wasn't just a car, it was a paradigm shift. It redefined what was possible, and its impact will be felt for generations to come.
With all the research you've done on the Miura, is there anything that surprised you, something you didn't expect?
Honestly, what really struck me was the level of craftsmanship and attention to detail that went into each car. This was the 1960s, remember? Mass production techniques were still evolving. But Lamborghini built each Miura with an almost obsessive dedication to quality.
So they weren't just machines, they were works of art.
Exactly. You can see it in the hand-stitched leather interiors, the polished engine components, the perfectly aligned body panels. These weren't just cars to be driven, they were built to be admired.
That passion, that artistry, that's what sets the Miura apart.
Absolutely. It's what makes it so timeless. It wasn't just a product of its time. It was a statement, a vision of the future. And that vision still resonates today.
Now, before we wrap up, let's get back to those special editions and prototypes you mentioned. The Roadster was stunning, but it never saw the light of day. What about the others?
Let's talk about the Miura Jota. This was a special project headed up by Lamborghini's test driver, Bob Wallace. He wanted to make a lightweight, high-performance version of the Miura that could actually compete on the racetrack.
So he turned the Miura into a race car. I bet Ferruccio loved that.
Not quite. Remember, Ferruccio wasn't interested in racing at all, but he gave Wallace some freedom to experiment. The Jota was an incredible feat of engineering. Wallace stripped out the interior, swapped out steel body panels for lightweight aluminum, and squeezed even more power out of that V12 engine.
How much more power are we talking about?
It's said that the Jota had over 400 horsepower, a significant jump from the standard Miura. Sadly, the only Jota ever built was destroyed in a crash.
That's a heartbreaking end for such a unique car, but its spirit lived on right.
Absolutely. Lamborghini later built a handful of SVJ models, which were essentially road-going versions of the Jota. They incorporated some of its design elements and performance upgrades. Those SVJ models are incredibly rare and highly coveted by collectors.
So if you stumble across one in a barn somewhere, you've hit the jackpot.
You said it. Now there's another interesting prototype, the Miura SVJ Spider. This one-off was showcased at the 1981 Geneva Motor Show. Imagine a Miura S transformed into a Targa-style convertible with the SVJ treatment. Wider wheels, a rear wing, a seriously aggressive look.
It sounds like they were trying to recapture some of that Miura magic. Did it work?
Oh, it worked. The SVJ Spider was an absolute showstopper, but like the Roadster, it remained a one-off.
It's amazing to think about all these different Miura variations that were dreamed up. It's a testament to the car's enduring appeal and how ripe it was for customization.
It's like the Miura was a blank canvas, and each special edition or prototype was a different artist's interpretation of its essence.
That's a great way to put it. The Miura inspired so much creativity and innovation. Its legacy continues to shape the automotive world even today. Speaking of its legacy, I want to circle back to the Miura's impact on the car industry as a whole.
The Miura didn't just create a new market segment, it set a whole new standard. It proved that a supercar could be beautiful and functionally, powerful and refined. Its influence can be seen in so many cars that came after it.
Absolutely. The mid-engine layout, The focus on aerodynamics, the emphasis on creating a thrilling driving experience. These are all hallmarks of the modern supercar, and you can trace them all back to the Miura.
The Miura wasn't just a car, it was a revolution. It changed the way we think about performance cars, and its impact will continue to be felt for generations to come.
Before we wrap up this deep dive into the Miura, I have one last question for you. What's the one thing you really want listeners to take away from this episode?
I want them to realize that the Miura wasn't just about horsepower and speed. It was a statement, a declaration that you could have beauty and performance together. It showed the world that innovation could be breathtaking, and that striving for excellence could create something truly timeless.
Beautifully said. For all you Vintage Car Chronicles fans out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Lamborghini Miura. We hope you enjoyed the ride. And don't forget, a new episode of Vintage Car Chronicles drops every day, exploring another fascinating chapter in automotive history. So until next time, keep those engines revving